yeah. Back once again for another installment of the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop, and I am your co-host, Ray Russell, right here, riding shotgun. As we all know by now, Bob loved to do the driving back in the day. Well, he continues to do so right here on his very own program, guys. And this week, I feel confident in saying we're going to close out the story on Bob's time in the Mid-South Wrestling territory, circa 1981 and 1982. Of course, Bob came in a house of fire out of nowhere, capturing the Louisiana title over the Super D in his debut match. From there, he turned on fellow buddy and tag team partner Ted Dibiase, turned heel. How dare you, Bob? And he would go on to defeat that very same man, Dibiase, for the North American title. And in the process, Bob once again screwing over another quote-unquote friend in Paul Orndorff. Roop, of course, removing a piece from under the hood of Orndorff's car, preventing him from making it to the TV tapings that day to get his earned North American title shot. Instead, good buddy Bob steps in and said, "That's okay, I'll replace Paul." And the higher-ups, the powers that be, said, all right. And they allow Roop the title matchup against Dibiase, and with the help of the one-man gang, we have a brand new North American champion, Bob Roop. And you best believe that not only is the former champion Dibiase hot on the trails of Roop, but as is his former friend, Paul Orndorff, who got wind of what went down, and now Orndorff gunning for not just the North American title, but maybe a piece of Bob Roop's hind end as well. And we'll continue that story and so much more here this week. And in order to do so, we're going to bring him back onto the show right now. Welcome back, Mr. Bob Roop.
Hey, Ray. It's good to hear your voice, my friend.
It's good to be in the air conditioning right now, Bob. It's 90 degrees here, and it feels 100 already. I don't know if that's because we're just getting our first 90-degree days, or if this is the way it's going to be all summer. I'm in trouble.
Well, we skipped spring up here. We had one day of spring, and we're in summer now. I've got the AC and a fan going. So, yeah, I'm there with you, man.
Ditto.
Yep. I prefer it. Actually, I prefer it to the cold.
Well, yeah, I'll take it as long as I can get in and out of it when I want to.
Yeah, me too.
Well, man, we have continue on our journey, and likely we'll finish it up here this week in the Mid-South territory. 3 shows in the books already, and so much has happened from your debut, the Louisiana Championship win, the turn on your partner Ted Dibiase turning heel, and now you've turned again, this time on your good friend Paul Orndorff. A heel turning on a heel, forcing Paul Orndorff, of all people, a natural heel, to be the babyface in this situation, because at this point, you've got an enemy pretty much of everyone in that locker room. Ted Dibiase wants his belt back. Paul Orndorff, now you screwed him out of a title shot, and now you're the champion. Of course, Killer Carl Cox, no fan of yours. And Dick and Murdoch, we're going to see here in a minute, going to return to the territory as well. Hot on your trail. So lots going on here. And, man, I can't wait to jump back into it.
Well, to be fair, the Orndorff turn was his fault. I mean, there's no way around it, because everybody, including the announcers, Bill Watts, everybody was saying Bob Roop is someone who cannot be trusted by anyone. So for Orndorff to trust me, I mean, what an idiot. I'm sorry Paul's gone now, but, he shouldn't have trusted me. Self-interest is the number one motivation.
We all know you were both going for that belt, right? So we knew there could only be one champion. So Paul should have seen that coming, I guess. The only thing, and obviously hindsight being 2020, and it's a little fantasy booking here, the only thing that I would have enjoyed more was if Paul came out with those cable cords, those cords that go underneath the car hood, and said, I found these in Bob Roop's bag. And then you came out and said, somebody must have put them there, Paul. I didn't do that. That would have been fun.
I can't quite remember, but I think that might be what happened. Would I be stupid enough to leave those cords out there on purpose?
Right.
Unless I've been thinking about this, Ray. Unless I wanted him to find them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because okay. You know why? Because he's going to be outraged. He's going to be absolutely furious. And that's the best way to have somebody when you're going to go against them. Well, have them either way up or way down. You don't want them all calm, cool, and collected. That's supposed to be my role. So, yeah, Paul was all ready to get some serious payback. Now, of course, we were working here, but it made sense. That's the only thing I can think of why Watts would orchestrate things that well. that way.
Right. Needless to say, you took the belt from Dibiase. He's hot on your trails, and now you've pissed off the Brandon Bull, Paul Orndorff, the soon-to-be Mr. Wonderful as well. And, we're going to see how that plays out as we continue on here. I'm looking forward to seeing where we go. Well, we were in the middle of April when we left off last. You had a couple of fun TV matches over Jesse Barr and Coco Samoa. You're actually going to work Coco, I think, again here on TV before we're done looking through all of this. But if you're ready to roll, we'll jump back into things.
Oh, yeah. Let's go, my friend.
All right. Well, we're going to continue on with the month of April. We ended at the midway mark, so we move on to week 3 here on April TV. Bob Roop stepping in the ring with Dick Murdoch back from New Japan. So that means Carl Cox is back. If anybody remembers, Carl Cox replaced Dick Murdoch, who went off to New Japan. And now that Dick is back, Cox is gone. Yes, I said Dick and Cox in the same sentence, guys. Everybody get their chuckle out of the way. And it's sad to say, but it is true here. This was the end of Carl Cox's in-ring career. He retires after this. Comes in, works for about a month, and pins you in 2 minutes, by the way, Bob. And then he retires. He got what he wanted out of this. So the killer retires. The killer retires. It's okay. You could have pointed out later on in that same episode, you captured the North American title. So it was all good at the end of the day. Yeah. Got to give and take.
I was a weird kind of a loser, wasn't I? I go out and get beat twice and win the championship. It takes some strategy.
Sadly, we say we bid adieu to Carl Cox's in-ring career, of course. Yes. His son on social media, I'm in contact with him. I'm going to try to work something out and have an interview with him in the not-so-distant future because he's always posting some super rare pictures and fan art. Kids, people would color and draw pictures of Carl and send them to him, and he's going through this box of all this treasure trove of his dad's career, and he's posting pictures and things online, and they're just amazing. So hopefully...
Well, you know something? Carl was one of the boys in the sense of being a pro wrestler, but he actually in real life was a man among boys. He was a serious adult. It shows by what he did when he retired. He went to work in the prison system, taking care of some of the most dangerous people they had in those city jails. And when there was a problem, they called him in to handle it, to deal with it. And not just, he wasn't just that he was a vicious bully, it's that he was capable of being one, but he's also very smart, and he could figure out ways to do it.
Right.
But he was somebody I respected fully. Right. I mean, in spite of all the things he did in his life that, turned out to be something he wished he hadn't, in spite of all that, I respected him and admired him, and I liked him. And that was rare. That's a rare combination to be able to have in pro wrestling.
No, totally. And unfortunately, Carl Cox now retired from the ring, and in steps Dick Murdoch, right back in action like he never left. A month ago, he was in the middle of that feud, him and Dibiase both feuding with you, Bob. And here you have a match right out of the gate. Dick Murdoch returns, actually wearing the same gear that Carl Cox was wearing. So Murdoch literally replacing Carl Cox here back in this storyline. As the action gets going, you guys are hammer and tong back and forth. Skandor Akbar, again, coming ringside. He interfered on behalf of you, him and the gang did, to help you win the title. And now Akbar back out here trying to interfere once again. But Dick Murdoch, using the entrenching tool that Carl Cox brought to the territory, a little shovel there. And Bob Roop, you get chased off from the ring and counted out. You wanted no part of getting hit with a shovel. I wrote, that's not really fair in my notes here. So basically you take the count-out loss on behalf of a shovel.
Yeah, well, and that was the one where Murdoch came out with the bag and the shovel and the hat. And he pulls his tights out of the bag and puts on his wrestling tights. You talk about not even warming up. The guy hadn't even gotten clothes yet.
You got to admit, that's classic Dickie Murdoch, though.
Oh, man, he comes and gets right in the ring. He hasn't done one jumping jack or one stretch or anything else to warm up. I guess you got to say that guy's just ready to go at all times.
I guess so.
And frankly, he was. He was a fight waiting to happen. He was looking for it every chance he got.
Literally and figuratively.
I'm real life, yeah. I mean, he wasn't assaulting people, but if it came along, he'd be glad to step in and see if he could get a piece of it.
I've heard the stories in the locker rooms and mostly in the bars. So I think some of the stories are out there anyway on old Dick Murdoch. I think you've told a couple yourself. So hopefully we'll encounter that name many more times as we continue on, and hopefully some more memories jog there for Murdoch, because every story that comes out about him, they're unbelievable, but they're totally believable when you know what Dick Murdoch was all about. As we close out the month of April here, you just watched this match, I don't know, yesterday, today, tag team match. You team up with Joe Blanchard's son. Everybody knows Tully Blanchard, eventually of the Four Horsemen fame and the Brain Busters in the WWF. But it's Bob Roop teaming with Tully Blanchard here. You guys score a win over a couple of your recent opponents, Buddy Landel and Coco Samoa. Tully makes the blind tag out to you in the finish here. You come in with a high knee and the big leg drop on your buddy, and you score the win for the team. Do you have any recollection of teaming with Tully or hanging around Tully whatsoever?
No, but it brought back some faint recollections when I watched the match earlier today. I decided to wait till the day of to watch these things, so I wouldn't get them confused and mixed up when I go back to think about them. But one thing I noticed that Tully and I did some good spots with Buddy and Coco, and where they got to look good. They looked competitive. We did some stuff where they out-strategized us. We made Buddy look like $1 million. He did a thing where he arm dragged us both and slammed us both and covered me, I think. I think he did something that had us both out of the ring, commiserating with each other, me and Tully, on getting our butt kicked. So I was happy with the match because I didn't remember it. In fact, all the ones I'm watching gives me pleasure because of the fact that my attitude when I was there was totally gone. I wasn't one of the boys anymore. I was, after that bit with California, and I'm not going to drag out, old problems, but with both times where I tried to start a union and we got stooged off by one of the other wrestlers, and then we had wrestlers who wouldn't have anything to do with us, with me for as long as I was opposition. It kind of jaded me as far as feeling like I needed to be camaraderie or have camaraderie with everybody. Not that I hated anybody or anything else. I was traveling on my own.
You there to do your job, just like, any regular. I got you. So I know in a professional wrestling is quite a camaraderie type of deal. Of course, they say you don't make a lot of friends, however, even though you're riding up the road, real friends, I mean, riding up and down those roads, for so many years with these guys. They say if you can count on one hand how many actual friends you can trust that you made in the wrestling business, you're a pretty lucky guy. But I tell you what, man, you talk about not really being around Tully, you guys are just thrown in there together randomly, a one-off here as a team, but you guys worked really well together. Two professionals that are getting it done. And Tully is very well known for having two of the greatest tag teams of the 1980s. First with Gino Hernandez down in Southwest for his father, Joe Blanchard, in San Antonio. Yeah. But later on, everybody knows Tully and Arn Anderson, one of the greatest tag teams in the history of professional wrestling. It's kind of cool to see him here with yet another partner. Tully was good as a singles and a great heel promo. I mean, talk about a guy you just looked at and wanted to beat the shit out of. Tully Blanchard could accomplish that. You guys were great here.
Yeah, he was a quarterback in college at West Texas on the football team. Mm-hmm. So he's a guy that had to be able to, he had to be smart. You got to remember all the plays. You got to have a mind that works. I just found that out today about his background, but that gave me not that he always came across as being pretty smart, but he grew up in a wrestling family, so he should have been easier to break in, like with Bobby Shane, than with someone like myself or like Buddy Landel, who came from a completely, non-wrestling type, or even Buddy Landel, I don't think even had any sports in his background. But
and Tully had the extra luxury of his father being a promoter as well.
Yes.
So he got to see the inner workings of not just how to get in the ring and have a match, but just how every little piece of the puzzle works, both in the ring and backstage.
Well, think about this. For him and the Funks and the Von Erichs, even Mike Graham in Florida, those guys always had a place to work, to have a job. Mm-hmm. Even if they couldn't get booked anywhere else in the country. In fact, I don't know if George Goulas, who was Nick Goulas' kid,
right?
I don't know if George. I'm not trying to knock him. I met him.
That's okay. Like everybody else does.
Plus enough guy, but boy, he looked more like a swimmer than a wrestler. And I don't know if he ever got booked anywhere, but in where Little Pond he was in, he was a big frog because he was getting pushed on top. He'd work against guys like Big Bad John, who was twice his size,
right.
Not taller, but in weight. And he'd beat him, you know.
And Nick Gulas was no fool either because he stuck him with a very young Bobby Eaton who could go in there and pretty much do whatever he needed him, take the bumps and, basically make him look good because Daddy said sell. That's what George Gulas would tell you.
Bobby was a genius and one of the nicest guys in the world, too.
Yeah, he sure was.
Yeah, he was a sweetheart, really. I never saw a negative thing ever about him. Now, I wasn't around him that long, you know.
Right.
He was around a lot longer. Like you told me previous episode about Jesse. Was it Jesse Barr getting his eye pulled out?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I wasn't around for any of that. I just remember him on his way up, you know, and by the time he made it to WWF.
Some people change when they get up there in the bright lights, huh?
Well, you get older. You get older too, and what you do, I believe in karma. And I won't get off onto a tangent here, but I do believe that what you hand out, you get back. I'm not saying Jesse put out somebody's eye, but he might have injured somebody along the line. And then also, you don't necessarily have to have done anything bad. I mean, a lot of times there's all kinds of books about why do bad things happen to good people. And I don't know if that's karma or something else. Maybe that's fate. Anyway, with Tully, I was looking. When I went to look at the match, I was curious at what level of sophistication he had, and he was right up there. His timing was good, and his action was good. His setup, his philosophy was good. We made it, as far as I know, the only time we ever tagged together. We made a pretty good team.
No, the finish impressed me, and I guess it really shouldn't. Everybody should have been able to. Anybody on your guys' level should have been able to work like this back then. I guess it surprises me because we haven't seen stuff like this in a long time, but you guys have never teamed before, and there's a blind tag. Tully just tags out to you. You're in the ring. The guy's getting shot off the rope, and he runs into your high knee for the finish, and I was just like, wow, that's really good for guys that you guys had 2 minutes to go, all right, what do you want to do, or whatever, maybe.
Yes.
So
that
was pretty cool.
After Bill gave us the finish, he might have set up the prelims. I'm not sure. Now, Bill would have had that ability because that was Eddie Graham's big forte. Eddie Graham learned false finishes from a guy named Dax Sarpolis. I believe it was in Amarillo. And so Eddie, instead of guys making a comeback and then they just slam the guy and pin him, Eddie would go like that was going to be that little standard finish, but he'd have guys kick out. He'd do 2 or 3 false finishes. So by the times they did beat the guy, it would come as a surprise. And that would titillate fans. Fans would go, oh, here it is. It's over. And 1, 2, and the guy kicks out. Well, wait a minute. It's not over. Bill picked that up. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't already know it, but I'm not sure Gagne did that. I'm not sure if they were doing that up in Atlanta.
Booking 101. We can't say that's where it originated from, but that's more than I had ever knew how far back that went. So that's pretty cool. I learned something new.
Oh, good. Well, Eddie mentioned that he had where he had learned his way of doing it, and it was effective. Eddie was funny because he would put his head down, he reached up to his eyebrow like he's rubbing his brow, like, let me think here, let me think. He already had in mind what he was going to say. Yeah, but he didn't want to make it. He didn't want to make it look easy.
Like, of course, got to make it look like you're sweating. He was, so, like, his entire life was just a big work. I get it. So I think. Yeah. You had an opportunity today to watch a couple of, or at least one of them. I don't know if you got to watch both of them, but I think we talked about one of them already last week, but this week, you're going to finish out your final TV match. Spoiler alert, guys, we haven't gotten there yet, but your last match on TV that takes place, I believe in July, is against, once again, Mr. Olympia. You worked him earlier to, I believe it was a draw, and you wrestle him again here in July. It's going to be when we get there. And I'm just curious, now that you've had an opportunity to watch at least one, if not both of those matches, your take on those matches you had with them.
I watched them both, and I was really, really pleased. The first one, we went to not a time limit draw. The time actually, it was.
The TV time, right?
The belt, he had covered me for about the 5th or 6th time, and the belt was ringing. The referee counted 1, and the bell rang. They went out the air. But he had me, I don't know if I ever had him covered even once. but he had me covered several times, and he got him over.
Oh, well, that was, yeah, he was still young to the company at that point, so they used you to kind of build him up. Yeah.
Well, and the second one, when I was going out, he put me to sleep.
That was his finisher.
And it was great. I mean, I was watching it, and it looked totally believable to me when he came back, when he woke me up, the slap in the back. I looked at it. I didn't see any holes in it at all. I thought it was well executed. I also liked the matches. We did some back and forth stuff.
You guys, yeah, they were really good matches.
Yeah, fairly without no mistakes, no big gaps. We did some fairly intricate stuff together. And you have to remember, we didn't have a half hour before the match to go over this stuff. We might have 5-10 minutes. But both of us had the sophistication that we could talk. What I would say, he could picture, and what he would say, we had been trained the same way, and we still kind of thought the same way.
Okay.
So when you talked about doing stuff, you both saw the same picture in your mind when you were visualizing it ahead of time.
Right. So you guys are ready to go when you call a spot or whatever the case may be here. Or maybe he realizes what you're going into and he's already right there with you. So you could tell that you guys aren't sitting there putting it together a match like they do nowadays, whole move for move. But I thought the matches were great. They were, I was a huge Olympia guy. I wasn't watching it when it aired, but when the tapes came out, I was like, wow. I mean, I'd seen some Jerry Stubbs before, but not to be able to watch him week after week and see, all the different people that he was working with. I go, man, he's a level above even what I remembered. And, the matches with you were great. And for anybody curious, in that second bout, he beat you. He put you to sleep with his finisher in the middle of the ring there. And that's you putting him over on your way out. So that's the right thing to do. So,
oh, yeah. Of course. And anybody, any heel that would say, I shouldn't have done that. No, that's what you do. That's your job. Not trying to detract from anything, but this isn't real. If it was real, I don't know. I've got penned in my career, in my amateur career, but not often. 3 times in
if it was real
matches.
If it was real, the people would have been bored because they came to see pro wrestling and not the grappling on the ground, right? We want to see some real wrestling.
Yes, if you're not sure a wrestling fan. And most of them are people who have wrestlers in their family.
Right.
That were wrestlers themselves and brought their family up. I used to go to matches at Michigan State University, a college of 40,000 kids, and the wrestling matches might have 200 people there. College wrestling against teams with nationally ranked teams. It just didn't draw. And yet the next night they'd have basketball, and they'd fill up the arena next door with 15,000 people. So you can see that amateur wrestling is not a spectator sport.
Let me shoot a few names at you. We'll try to do a little rapid fire here. If you have, if you don't have much, just, good guy or a good worker, just any memory you might have of a few names here. It doesn't have to be necessarily when you encounter them in Mid-South, but just in general, because, I glanced over him, even though he's larger than life and a really great guy in real life, by the way, too. He comes out here and helps you defeat Dibiase for the title, and he's hiding in plain sight there. I totally didn't even mention him. I'm talking about the one-man gang. Did you have any memories of working around the gang?
When he first stared.
Crusher Brewfield. Papos. Right.
With the Papos, yeah. And I stayed in an apartment with him for a couple of weeks. And he used to watch the TV all day. So he did. And it was very quiet. I wouldn't say if he had a mouthful of it. Yeah, I remember from there. And then I didn't see him again until it was out in Louisiana when he came in.
Yeah.
And he took up with a girl out there that was, hung around the matches a bit. And they ended up getting married. And then a couple, 3 years ago, and even then, no communication, very, very little. But a few years ago, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I went to a benefit for some sort of emotional special education need down in Indiana. And Bill Eadie was there, and his partner from New York, I can't think of the guy's name. The one-man gang was there. What they did is we had a question and answer session. But I got a chance. He had completely changed. He had a lot more. He came out of his shell.
Oh, yeah. Way. Yeah.
So I got a chance to talk to him at length we reminisced about those days, and he kind of looked back and laughed. But yeah, I think he got a very successful career, and I always thought he was a good guy, a decent guy. And Bill Eadie's one of the best, of course. And so yeah, that was a good one to go to. The three other wrestlers that were there were all good people, and I enjoyed being around them.
That's great. Yeah, I just ran into Gang down there in Orlando, and he was just. They had a ring announcer in Dallas for many years named Mark Lawrence, and he was one of the guests there as well. And he just kept walking around saying, I don't think anybody's having a better time than the one-man Gang. Like, Gang was just so happy to be there and happy to be acknowledged by all these fans that remembered him. And, yeah, he had a great time down there, and he was very, very outgoing. So you're right, he has come out of his shell.
Well, that's great. I mean, there are some guys that, and I don't know, maybe they do it as a defense mechanism, but, they're kind of aloof and like, I'm a big star and I don't have time to, to get down and personal with you. I'm not going to come out of my persona and, be personal and friendly with you. I never agreed with that. Of course, I wrestle under my own name, and although the character I had was a persona. I've said things that I would never say in real life, nasty things like I'm superior to people and all that would never say. Well, I mean, if you do, you're an idiot. By doing that, by saying that, you prove the exact opposite. You are not better than other people. You have to tell people that you're better than them. Obviously, you don't feel that you are, and you're trying to argue the case. So, no, I never felt that way. Well, but I'm no worse either.
Right. So the Gang, he doesn't come out there alone, though. At this point in time, he's managed by Skandor Akbar. Did you have any memories of being around Skandor at all?
Vague. Never rode in the car with him, but around the dressing room, and he was a good guy too. Very down to earth, easy to like, hard worker, good mind, good worker. Mm-hmm. Had a long career as far as I know.
Oh yeah, and he wrestled and he managed forever, all the way into the 90s. Yeah,
I liked him. I thought he was a good guy. He was easy to get along with. Like I say, after Knoxville, I traveled by myself almost exclusively for the rest of my career.
I was just curious if you had any, maybe something funny happened in the ring, in the locker room. Maybe there's just something else there. So I just figured I'd throw that out there at you because we haven't talked about him yet. And that's like one of my favorites growing up, mostly because once the Dallas promotion got on ESPN, they started off on there basically 4 days a week. And then eventually when Vern folded, they were on there 5 days a week. And Akbar was on my TV 5 days a week for years. So I come to know him pretty well, at least his character. So,
well, I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
I'm happy that he was able to work that long. A lot of guys who retire, they don't want to. They just, nobody will book them.
They run out of options. I totally get it. Yeah. So let me ask you about another name here, and I don't know if you know the legacy of Iron Mike Sharp, who is a second-generation wrestler. His father was Mike Sharp, his uncle Ben Sharp. They were a world-famous tag team back in the 40s, 50s, even in Japan, one of the first Americans to go over there, really, on that first tour. And they really dominated over there as well and on the West Coast here. But this is Iron Mike Sharp, the big burly guy from the 1980s. People remember. He grunted rah, rah, around the ring, but he's most well known for having a serious case of OCD when it came to being clean. There are stories out there that he would wrestle, and this is not a joke, by the way, Bob. He would wrestle the first or second match on those Boston Garden cards. He worked in New York for quite a while, and he would go take a shower, and he would still be in the shower when the event ended. And he actually was locked in the Boston Garden one night because he stayed in the shower too long.
Wow.
So I was just curious if you work him here a couple times, not enough probably to remember it here. I just curious if you ever had any run-ins with old Iron Mike.
No, I don't remember a lot about Mike.
That's fair. We hit good on the Gang, and you remembered Akbar, so we're doing good. That's all right. I was just curious because I got a couple of guys that I record with, and they're listeners of this show as well, and they'd probably kick my ass if I didn't mention Iron Mike here because we have a lot of fun with him. And let's just put it this way. He wasn't the best on promos, and we have a lot of fun with him on some other shows we do when we listen to his promos. So
okay, well, I never heard anything bad about him.
No, I don't know that. I haven't heard anything negative. Just that he had a serious issue with I guess he had a ritual basically, and he had to follow that ritual. He was a very OCD guy. He had to do things exactly a certain way every day. You know, it's just that mentality, I guess. So it's kind of fun. Here's another name. I don't know if he was there when you first got there back in 81. He had been there somewhere in 81. He got injured. He left. Bill brought him back here in 82. And he's doing kind of a superstar Billy Graham meets, I don't even know what I would say, Richard Simmons? I'm just saying that for the exercise here, because I'm talking about Precious Paul, the living doll. I'm talking about Paul Ellering, of course, going to be the eventual manager of the Road Warriors, but Bill gives him more than one shot here to make it big. I mean, bleach blonde, and I mean, in this era, he is jacked to the gill. If you guys thought the Road Warriors were big, go look at what Paul Ellering looked like in the early 80s when he was still trying to wrestle. But he just continuously getting injured, kept putting him on the shelf. And but he's back here in 82. I don't know when you were looking at some of your matches, if it was any of the shows with Paul doing these ridiculous exercise routines and things in the ring and lifting kids up in the air and things you couldn't even get away with today. He does the club challenge with the Iron Sheik at one point. So I'm just curious, do you have any memories you want to share of Paul Ellering?
Yeah, I knew Paul fairly well. We hung around together, at least in the dressing room. We spent some time together out there. And then when he came in with Ole, when we started the Road Warriors,
yes,
he was already there, I think. So, you know, I worked with
I think
those guys for several years.
I could be wrong, but I think he was with Arn and Matt Bourne before they had to, you know, get rid of that and bring in the roadies. So that makes sense.
Right. Well, and again, I always liked Paul. Paul was a pretty straight arrow. He didn't smoke or drink. He didn't do drugs.
Well, maybe some steroids here, Bob, but.
Well, that's possible, but he didn't do he was an investor, and he was always watching the stock market and studying the market, and I always felt like he was going to come out to be a multimillionaire, and I always expected that because he's a smart guy. Plus, he was nice. He was friendly. He was likable. He wasn't like a bent over backwards. He came out of character. The guy I knew, Paul Ellering, I believe that was the real guy. So I enjoyed that. I really liked him. And we spent some time together, a few times in the car. I remember one of them, there was a party at one of the hotels. There was two rooms with a connecting door with it open. And there were people all in the other room. And there was maybe 10, 12 wrestlers there. And maybe the same amount of fans, girls. And there was only in wrestling. I hope you might have to edit this one, but
we'll go with it.
There was one of the wrestlers was on the bed in one of the rooms, naked. Now he did have a blanket up to about his waist, and there was a girl in the bed with him, and she was clothed, but there were some things showing. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. And they weren't going. Paul told me to meet him there or something. And I walked in, and the room I walked into, there wasn't anything going on. So I was looking for Paul. I went in the other room. I saw him over by the window looking outside, and I walked over. And I kind of noticed what was going on in the bed, but I didn't pay attention to it. But what was going on was, with this stuff going on in the bed, a naked wrestler and a girl in the bed, and there's 25, 30 people in these two rooms just having beer, talking. It's like a cocktail party, like a Palm Beach. People talking about, the matches are good. And I remember talking to Paul in that room for a while, and I said, oh man, I can't be standing in here with this crap going on. I ended up taking off, but I'm not saying Paul was a pervert, don't get me wrong. That was typical of the wrestling business.
Right. I get it. Yeah, you just you got to tune things down sometimes, or just, I guess, enjoy the show if that's what your deal is too, I suppose.
Well, the thing that was funny was that, well, first of all the people in the other room obviously weren't interested in the show, but there was beer. There's a keg of beer or something in there. But the people that were in this room, a lot of them were talking like at a cocktail party, one corner, a couple of people, another 4 people over here around the table. And all of them are pretending not to be watching what's going on in the bed. But of course, at the time, there wasn't anything going on. To my eternal curiosity, I never understood how that girl could subject herself to that. I mean, 30 people watching you being she wasn't as far as I knew, she wasn't a professional, but she wasn't a prostitute.
Gotcha.
That's wrestling. It's just weird. If you're on television, you're famous, you can get away with almost anything.
Sure.
But Paul was a good guy. I saw him not long ago. I mean, the current shot of him from the last few years, that he hasn't aged well, let's put it that way.
I haven't done a lot. He must be fine, Bob. He's working for the WWE right now.
Well, good. Paul, I still love you, my friend. I'm not trying to knock you here. You're always a good man in my mind. You still are, my friend.
I know he's there right now, so he's collecting a pretty good paycheck. So, again, he has something to offer. He has that experience, and he's been doing it a long time. And as a manager, you don't have to take the bumps, especially nowadays. So you can last a little longer.
Yeah, the Road Warriors worked up there for a while. So, Paul had a chance to be around those guys. And, if you met Paul, I'm pretty sure you'd respect him. Because I did, and I don't respect everybody.
There's another guy that you say there's like Bobby Eaton, one of the nicest guys in the world. You've never heard anything bad said about him. I've never heard anything bad said about Paul. He's not so much in that, boy, he's a happy-go-lucky, nice, fun, and loving guy, but you don't hear anything negative either. It's more of a respect thing when it comes to Paul Ellering.
Yeah, and I remember another thing. He had a thing for a certain kind of dog. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Small dog. He got one and he trained it and had it trained, and he really loved the animal, and that was endearing to me too, that he was like that. He was able to express himself in a positive way. So yeah, I got a lot of time for Paul. Hope he's doing well.
Yeah, I think he even did the Iditarod at one point in his life. So he's, got a little bucket list of things that he's been able to accomplish, and kudos to him. And obviously you talked about him playing the stock market and whatnot. For the longest time, his gimmick was carrying around the newspaper looking at the stocks. So, it was like art imitating life or vice versa there. But we'll move on. That was cool. Some fun names there. Good stories about Paul Ellering. We're going to go on, and I've been pumping this for weeks, and I'm sure he's been dying and waiting for me to do this. We have a listener by the name of Terry Canova who sent in, it's been several weeks ago now, he sent in a story in regards to a time that he attended a show at the Municipal Auditorium in New Orleans watching Bob Roop versus Paul Orndorff. And last week, I incorrectly stated the date was May 1st. And thanks to Terry for reaching out. He said he went and looked that up, and he said that was actually a Superdome show on May the 1st. So this match actually would have taken place sometime in April. I don't have a date for it, Bob. But I wanted to read to you now this story that Terry sent me about your match with Paul Orndorff.
Okay.
He says, Bob Roop was such a cool heel to me. He and Bob Orton were two of my favorite bad guys. I loved when Bob was the guest commentator with Boyd Pierce. He was indeed the man with the plan. He was just the intelligent bad guy that was always one step ahead of the baby faces. However, on this particular night in the Municipal Auditorium, we were all cheering for Paul Orndorff to defeat Bob Roop for the North American title. Now, I don't remember much about the match itself, but in the finish, there was a referee bump. Bob Roop produces a foreign object and somehow loses it to Paul Orndorff. Orndorff then takes the object and knocks Bob out with it. So down you go, Bob, and the groggy referee rolls back over to make the 1, 2, 3, and the auditorium went insane. We were all jumping up and down cheering for the new champion. But wait, when the referee raises Orndorff's hand, he is still holding the foreign object. Come on, Paul, you're smarter than that. The referee looks up at the hand and shakes his head in disgust, takes the belt and the object away from Orndorff, gives the belt back to Bob Roop, who is still laying flat out on the mat. What a great visual there. He says, the crowd goes from jubilant to pissed instantly. A typical swerve we've all seen many times by now, but at the time, great territory booking that took us all for a fun ride up and down that I still remember 40 plus years later. And I wrote here in my notes, Bob, that is really special. That is pro wrestling.
Yes, that is. And thank you very much, Terry. Thank you very much. That's very flattering. That's a tribute, that you would remember that like that. And, you hear me chuckling or laughing. To me, that was the really best way to get beat. You're basically out of it. You're knocked out. But you somehow, or you're out of it, you but even from that position, when they gave me the belt back, it gave me back all my heat with it.
One of the best visuals is seeing a heel, a knocked out heel, getting their hand raised or getting the belt reached. Yes, it's great.
Yes.
They've done nothing to earn this, but here they go.
No. Well, I'm the one that brought the foreign object into the ring. Yeah. So I'm the one that should be penalized. But instead, it makes a bigger babyface out of Paul. Mm-hmm. And it makes it like the one negative. I don't know if Terry stuck around to notice, but sometimes when you get beat like that, like knocked out or TV is fine because there's plenty of security. But in a house show, if they just see you get like really beat up, you better make sure when you're leaving that you got plenty of security because sometimes if you've got the kind of heat that I'm assuming that I had,
the fans,
you got people that take a shot at you and they're thinking, well, he just was knocked out or I have goopy or whatever. Yeah. Now's the time to take a shot at him. So,
well, that's what I was thinking. I'm just being one of those fans right now, and they've been at their peak. They've popped. They can't get any higher. The sense of euphoria comes over them as you've lost the belt to Paul Orndorff, and then they take it away. And fuck you, Bob Roop. I'll show you.
Yeah. The thing is that set me up for the interviews because I would never admit to being actually beaten by anybody.
This is excellent too, Bob, because I should point out, remember I told you I incorrectly noted this as the May 1st show at the Superdome. This took place, a week, 2 weeks, however many days before the Superdome show in the same city. So you guys have a return match, taped fist here, and you're going to go over on Orndorff in 18 minutes. Now that had to be a hell of a match, a fun time, taped fist, you two going at it in the ring. But that story that they told there actually built to a big Superdome card in the local city.
Wow. I wish there was somebody out there that had the particulars of that tape fist match.
Well, you ain't kidding.
That would be great.
Yeah, let me see that on videos. Somebody sneak a camcorder in that night. We'd love to see it.
You never know what's out there.
Things pop up all the time on YouTube, old wrestling shows and things from the old handhelds people snuck in. So, you know what? Before I finish Terry up here, he goes on at the bottom of his story here. He added on, he said, on a side note, one of my most disappointing days as a young fan, I was visiting my grandmother and a friend who lived nearby called him. And he said, Bob Roop was actually at a house in our neighborhood. He says on the west bank of New Orleans in Marrero. You familiar with that city?
Not really, but
okay. He said,
keep going.
Sure. He says that day, a few of my friends actually got to meet Bob and touch the North American title. I was so disappointed because he was at his grandmother's. So you came visiting his neighborhood the day he was gone. So he said, damn, I love and miss my grandma, but I would have really loved to have met my favorite heel, Bob Roop, that day. He said, thanks for the memories, Bob Roop, the man with the plan.
Well, I'm sorry that I wish you'd have been able to too, but we're both still alive, I assume. And so let's try to do it sometime in the future. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna, Ray just went down for a get together in Florida and, who knows? I might be going somewhere.
You never know.
Next year, you never know.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, it's nice to know. I remember I had a friend in New Orleans that I could stay with, and for free. And that I'm not sounding like a real jerk here, but money was tight. I said that on a former one of our maybe the first week we did Mid-South.
Yeah.
I came in there broke and owing money. I was still living low on the hog. So if I could find a place to stay, I would try to pay in a way I would take the person out to eat or bring food to them and, and try to be friendly. I didn't just, come in and plop down and go to sleep. I would try to, be congenial with them. And
there were a lot of fans back then too, though, Bob. I'm sure you had to be careful as a heel, but there were a lot of fans back then that would welcome people into their homes for room and board or dinners and things of that nature as well. Specifically in the Mid-South, maybe not you, but a lot of the wrestlers would just kind of stay at fans' houses and do this and that, whatever it took when you guys were on the road.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that there was something going on, between the people. a lot of times, it was female people who were offering the accommodations, but you weren't expected to have to do anything for it. Mm-hmm. And
I think they were just pleased that that they were there with the celebrities, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, some of them would go out of their way to have a nice meal for you and everything else, and it was hard to turn them down. Now, I would try to do things like get them into matches for free or leave a pass for them or something.
Oh, that's cool.
Where I could help pay them back a little bit. But I mean, again, I was traveling by myself, or I had that little. Two big wrestlers wouldn't really fit in the front. I had that little toy Datsun, and it was fine to do that, to stay there, because I didn't have anybody else that needed to be accommodated. And again, until I brought my girlfriend, who later we got married, until I brought her out there to live. When you're on the road, the idea of coming back to your home base and living in an apartment like a motel or even a Holiday Inn or something by yourself, it's just so depressing. You're on the road even when you get home to your home city. I mean, where you're working. I would try to stay with people. I mentioned earlier staying with Buddy Landell, Bob Orton Jr., and I can't remember who else. After having a couple of little feedback from the women involved in Landell and Orton about me laying on the couch. Not with, it being indecent, but it was just, they found it shocking to get up and walk out, and there I am laying on the couch. So I decided not to bother them anymore, and I started looking for someone else to hang out, to hang out with. Mm-hmm. And I found it. One of them was the daughter of, I think it was a female mayor of Baton Rouge. I met her playing pool, billiards. And she was a fan and invited me over at a big guest house. So anybody that is around that hears this, if I'm ever out in one of the get-togethers, please come up and say hi. I'd be sure like to be able to thank you again after all these years.
Yeah, and I definitely want to say thank you to Terry Canova for writing that nice piece of business there. Great memories, great visuals, and it just sounds like a truly fun night at the wrestling matches, even if their fan favorite didn't win there that night. It's all because of that pesky Bob Roop. As we continue on here, storytelling on TV throughout the month of May. You're the North American champion now, and you're hot in the storyline with Paul Orndorff. But remember, Ted DiBiase also wanting to regain his North American title, and they sell it on TV like he's been out injured for a little bit. He returns here at the beginning of May in a one-on-one match with you, Bob. Non-title, of course. And they make sure to put DiBiase over clean with one of his finishers, the power slam in the middle of the ring, to give him his heat back and show that he can beat you. And it's likely he may regain that title once he's given a title opportunity.
Well, I laid there, right?
Oh, yeah. Down and out.
Well, see, that was good. I'm sure now I think about it. What better way to get people to come for a title match is if in a non-title match, the guy beats you. I mean, definitely. He beats you most definitively. There's no doubt about it. 1, 2, 3, and you can't even get up for a while. Well, now you have a rematch for the title. A lot of heels will say, oh, I had to, I'd lose my heat by doing that. No, you still got your heat. You lost some of your momentum, but you've still got enough heat that people are going to want to come see you. You still got heat because you go on TV the next week, you still got the title, and you deny that you got beat, or you say he cheated or whatever. That's the way to lose, is make sure that it's very plain. The guy beat you. No fluke, no trip, no accident. He beat you 1, 2, 3. And then, of course, on the rematch for the title, maybe he beats you again, but he's stupid enough to be wearing brass knucks on his hand when he does it. So,
well, in this instance, though, you did cheat. Obviously, well, you had some help from the gang here to defeat DiBiase for the belt. This is non-title, of course, here in the rematch on television. And they make sure to point out that, yes, DiBiase can beat you definitively right in the middle of the ring with one of his moves, the power slam. Down goes Bob Roop. DiBiase is back on television, and he looks better than ever. So not only are you working Orndorff on the house shows, but you're going to be working DiBiase as well upcoming. As I believe throughout the month of May, you're going to continue to work with Paul, and then Paul leaves at the end of May, and that's when you pick back up with DiBiase throughout the month of June. So you've got 2 feuds going on at the same time, 2 top-tier players, the top 2 baby faces, really, besides Dog. I shouldn't forget about him. But, yeah, so they really got you working some big names here. And so since you have 2 big feuds going on, there's not a whole lot you need to do on television throughout the month of May. So they're just keeping you relevant. You're the champion. You're going out there. You're working on TV every week. You beat Buddy Landell, which feels like for the 3rd time now since you've been here. So they love putting you in there with Buddy. Did Bill ever come to you guys and say, who do you want to work in regards to the enhancement guys? Or
no.
Was that, okay, I was just curious. I've heard that done in other territories from time to time. Who do you feel like working tonight, or whatever. So I was just curious because 3rd time with Buddy, a couple weeks later, you're working Coco Samoa again. You guys had a fun match the first time and a fun match this time as well. What I did notice is you've really been using that high knee for a finisher for the last couple months now. You've kind of moved to, I haven't seen the shoulder breaker done once in the last probably 2 months of TV that I could think of. And you've really been busting out that high knee. But what I love about it, and you don't do it like this every time, but my favorite ones are when you shoot them into the ropes, and as soon as they turn to come off, you're right there. I mean, it's like a shotgun blast, and the bump is amazing. It looks so dangerous, but it's like, I guess as long as they know it's coming, they got time to bump. But man, you're right up on them. You make it look so realistic. I honestly, sometimes you'll follow it up with a leg drop, and it's like, don't do the leg drop, Bob. That high knee's enough. Like, I buy that. But it's fun watching you in these matches here as the month goes on.
Well, and thank you for mentioning that, Ray. Looking back at that now, I would have to say that on a regular basis, I had the best high knee in the business.
Well, it took out enough people, Bob.
Yeah, and you could stop anybody with it. A guy could be beating the crap out of you, and you could hit him with a high knee, just a last gasp, and he goes down. He's selling. You could go down and sell for a while too. I gave him the high knee, but it was my last chance to keep from getting beat. And you can go down and sell too, to the point where the referee's counting both guys, see if either one's going to get up. Well, it was that kind of move. So it was something that was really handy to have that, and it did look good.
Yeah.
And of course, my knee wasn't anywhere near their face, but you couldn't tell that because it swung across in front of them about a millisecond before the side of my leg ran into them.
Yeah, catching with the thigh.
And by being up so high, I was 3 feet off the ground. By being up so high, it hit him in the upper body, and it made it look a lot more devastating. So, yeah, it was a great move. So, I was proud of that one.
You've got 2 matches here in the month of May, and I've heard you make comments before. You've mentioned it once or twice that you didn't recall ever teaming with Jody Hamilton, the Assassin. But you've got a couple of matches here in the month of May where you actually team up with the Assassin for some tag team matches against Ted Dibiase and Ernie Ladd. Of course, you're feuding with Dibiase. The Assassin's feuding loosely with Ernie Ladd. So that makes sense. It leads to a schmoz, no winner there. But tell me about your memories of Jody Hamilton working around the Assassin, being around the Assassin.
I remember he was the booker in Florida when I did the angle with Steve Keirn.
Oh, okay.
I had run it by him. And Eddie Graham, for some reason, wasn't around for this. I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't gone, but he just wasn't in the office much. And I ran it by Jody, and Jim Barnett was also hanging around the office. He had a percentage, so he could he called shots. He told us what to do in Puerto Rico, for example. When we did it, they didn't have any idea how effective it was going to be.
Right.
Because I didn't tell him what my promo was going to be, my interview. And basically I called his father, who had been a POW for 8 years. Yes.
Right.
8
Dick Keirn.
Yes. Yeah. Colonel Keirn, Steve Keirn's father.
We've actually talked about that a couple of times at length. I've kind of done some history on that whole thing, but please do share it here on your show.
Okay. I thought you meant on our show. I thought, well, I shut up. No, legitimate. When we did the angle on this Florida, it was of course on Championship Wrestling from Florida television. Early in the show, they had Steve out there with Eddie Graham, and they showed a video of Steve's father coming back from captivity after 8 years. Steve had been, 9, 10 years old when his father got captured, and he had made an interview that he didn't ever have his father when he was growing up, and Eddie Graham had been like a surrogate father to him. And that guy got Eddie out there. And so it showed Steve, it's like on the national news, the announcer of it was Walter Cronkite. And Walter Cronkite at that time, especially during the Vietnam War, was considered like the father of the news.
Cronkite, for many years.
He was heavy hitter. I mean, just head and shoulders above anybody else because he was anti-war and he had a conscience and he deplored it. He had a lot of heat. People didn't like it, but so anyway, we're in pro wrestling here. This is a pro wrestling show, but this piece of tape we're seeing, this video, this is legitimate as it can be. Walter Cronkite's doing a voiceover, and there's Steve, and Steve was supposed to wait for his dad to get off the plane and to come over to him. But when he saw his dad come down the stairs, as soon as he reached the bottom, Steve took off and ran across and embraced him as he got only a few steps away from the stairs leading him off the plane. Mm-hmm. Very, very emotional. And then I went out later in the show, and I just made I had practiced it. I practiced it for a couple hours in the days before, but I just made it short and sweet. I said anybody that got captured and didn't escape, that's the code of military conduct, that's number 1 or 2. I will not be captured. If I am captured, I will make every attempt to escape. So someone who was captured not once but twice and didn't escape either time, I don't consider him a hero. I consider him a coward. Well, about that time, it's horrible even now, isn't it? Isn't that horrible?
Yeah.
And Steve came charging from the back. He ran by the camera, and he hit his ankle on something, and he leaped. He was afraid his leg wouldn't support him, so he just took a dive, and he landed on. He's like me doing a high knee, just without the knee. He landed on me and knocked slowly backed away and knocked over his desk front. He's pounding on me. I'm throwing up pencils and stuff, and then Lawrence came and got me out of there. Well, when Steve came up, his original intention was to be mad, but his ankle was hurt. It could kill him. He thought he broke it. So he's got tears. He's trying not to cry from pain. And so he said, "Roop, you can pick on me all you want, but leave my father alone." And oh my God, you talk about effective. I was back in the dressing room by the time he gave his speech because it was only like 25 feet back into where you could watch the monitor. And so I was in there when he made his speech. And Jody was there and Jim Barnett was there. Jim Barnett was walking back and forth. He said, "Oh, my God, Bobby, what have you done? What have you done?" And Jody turned around. I love Jody, his country boy humor and wit. He said, "Bobby," he said, if you don't have any firearms in your bag or in your car," he said, "son, I advise you to get some." And so I knew.
That's when you did, right? Wasn't it?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, next day, but I didn't have I'd never had any weapons.
There's that sign that was in Jerry Jarrett's wall in the Memphis territory in his office, and the sign simply read, when you walked in, the first thing you saw, "Personal issues draw money." And it doesn't get much more personal than that story. But I'm assuming Jody, by that comment, he knew that not only did you have heat, but they were probably going to make a few bucks out of this.
Oh, yeah. And he and Tom Ernesto, as the assassins, he told stories about working in little country towns.
Oh, yeah.
Where they had people chase them out of town.
Right.
They'd go down the highway 120 miles an hour.
Yeah, his book scared me sometimes just reading some of the craziness.
Some of the stories he told, oh my God, he got a guy who's seen it all that would go into those places and get that kind of heat and not blow it off before the finish, where you can get out of there alive. Those guys were just relentless. They didn't care, I guess.
Well,
but oh my God.
Well, I'm going to piss a ton of people off here, but I want to try to close out Mid-South. So we're going to have to rein back in the stories from Florida. Believe me, Bob, I can't wait to get there because, my God, they just tried to redo that angle. We were covering 1985 Memphis on my other show, and they try to redo that angle with Steve Keirn, and his father's actually there. It's his father once again, but this is in 1985, and they try to redo it in Memphis, but we were pondering how they did it. Bob Roop, I could have asked you, but I didn't, and we were pondering, like, it had to be more personal, and the way you explained it in detail in the video and everything. No wonder it was such a draw there, and it was kind of a fizzle in Memphis because they just kind of introduced him. They didn't really go into his background other than he had, been in the military, and then they do the attack, and it really it was just another piece of a feud. It really wasn't a big deal there. So clearly, Eddie Graham and all of you guys, you, Steve, everybody involved, you guys did it the right way, and I look forward to getting back into that, man, because that's going to be a really fun time when we break all of that down. And I'm gonna have to talk to Barry Rose a little bit too before we get into that. I want to make sure we cover all bases when we do that.
Can I tell you another story about? It doesn't have to do with Florida, but about Jody Hamilton.
Absolutely, yes.
In Atlanta, when there was a guy going around that was assaulting women, and I can't remember the name of it, the guy. He'd done it half a dozen times, and Jody, he was a 310-pound guy.
Yeah.
He dressed up like a woman. He put on a dress and a hat and like a wig or a veil over his face. He was driving around Atlanta just hoping that whoever this guy was would pick on him. He had a 357 Magnum, right down by his leg. But, yeah.
Did he do it in a mask? That's the fun part, right? Put some rouge on the mask, man. That would have been fun.
Well,
that's an awesome story. I never heard that one. That's excellent.
Oh yeah. He's a hell of a guy. He's funny, great stories.
He was in that office for Turner for a long time, working underneath Dusty and stuff in the '90s. Sore topic, I know, but that's just. They kept him around. They used him. They even tried to work him back in as a manager right around 93, 94 it didn't last long, but I think he managed Paul Orndorff of all people. Jody been around. Of course, his son went on he wrestled a little bit, but he became very famous as Nick Patrick, the referee for many decades. Yeah, worked WCW forever, worked for the WWE, and he's still out there as well.
Good guy. Well, You're not gonna alienate me because our being together, Ray, has given me a chance to think back on those days. And when I talked about not being one of the boys, that was on me. I didn't want to be, so I wasn't reaching out. I talked to people and all that, but I wasn't at a bar with the boys. I wasn't hanging around.
Gotcha.
If we were in the motels or whatever, I wouldn't be in somebody else's room. I sort of ostracized myself. And by doing that, anything that, like, say Dusty he felt like he couldn't count on me. Well, he had a reason to, because I wasn't reaching out to him and giving him any kind of a clue that I was, I was going to be agreeable to doing what he wanted.
Right.
So for anybody so I'm taking the heat or the blame for whatever, and not blaming someone else. Nobody picked on me. I was kind of saying, look, I want to be. Okay, I'm going to go do my job, but I just want to be left alone. I don't want to be, I wasn't unfriendly to people, but I was quiet. I wasn't cutting up in the dressing room. I wasn't telling stories. And there's another factor, too, the shooter thing. And I'll tell you why. Because even me being an Olympian, when Dr. Death Steve Williams broke in 10 years later, and I worked with him, to the rest of my career, he was different from other guys. Because why? Because he was an athlete and he could wrestle, so he was a legitimate threat. And he
could probably break pretty much anybody's arms right off their body too if he wanted to.
Plus, he's 15, 20 years younger than me.
Yeah,
not that it was ever going to be a problem, but if there was, this is a guy you have to take seriously.
Yeah, he's a freaking gorilla.
Yes, it makes you think about him in a different way. Well, if I'm doing that and I'm an Olympian. Think about some guy who never had any wrestling at all, was maybe a hairdresser or something before he got in the wrestling business, and now he's got a match with me and thinking about what I might do. Right. Is he going to feel like I'm one of the boys that he can totally trust and feel confident? Of course not. And I've worked my whole career to try to get away from that. I never even got stiff with any of the boys. And terms of grabbing a hold and holding them too tight or too hard, not letting them go.
All the stories that are out there, Bob, I've never heard anybody say that you tried to shoot on them, to the best of my knowledge anyway. So that is one thing, and if they were going to make it up, they would have done it by now. So that's one thing, obviously, that you can absolutely say in your favor, that you are a former Olympian, you were a shooter, you were taught to hook, and you did not use that in a ring ever, unprofessional conduct with your, the guys that you're in the ring with. So that's totally good. Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Pro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron. I'm talking about that $5 all access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. We also offer remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show, covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive watch-along series, covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. And for those who like all of their podcasts in one nice, neat little pile, the WrestleCopia Patreon also offers a Patreon exclusive Spotify account. You can actually go over to your Spotify with your WrestleCopia Patreon credentials. Instead of listening or downloading directly from Patreon, you can go over to Spotify, listen to all the latest shows, including all of the early releases. And you get all of that and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. I'm looking here at results throughout May and June. I talked about you working Orndorff. You guys do a lot of blow off here because Orndorff's leaving. So a lot of big matches, cage matches, tape fist matches. And then into June, now you're working Dibiase, lights out matches, submission matches, tape fist, Texas Death. So you've probably gigged a few times here over the last couple of months. It's going to be fun when we get to the end of your run here, though. We'll get to that in a little bit as we move on into the month of June. Bob Roop, the North American champion, stepping in the ring with the old JYD, Junkyard Dog, title, I believe, on the line, and the dog going to plant you with that thump, the big power slam. But it's the one-man gang back out again to save the day, and then Ernie Ladd out as well. So we've got all kinds of people running out and things going on. You delivered the old shoulder breaker. You finally pulled it back out of your arsenal of moves here. Deliver it over in the corner, and I said, "What's Bob doing?" You drop the dog and the shoulder breaker in the corner, and you go up to the top rope. And we've seen you do this before in other territories. This is the thing you tried to do to end the career of Dory Funk. I believe it was Senior, and Terry Funk had to come out to the rescue. And here it is again, all the way 10 years later. Now in the Mid-South, you're going up top to end the dog's career. I don't know what you had planned up there, because out comes Ted Dibiase to the rescue. Dibiase jumps in front of the dog, sacrifices himself. As you come flying off the top rope, you hit Dibiase instead, knock him out cold so that JYD can get up, make that comeback, and lay you out. Now, in the process, all these people, all these moving parts, disqualification, no contest, call it what you want. There's no finish, really. But it was just fun, all these moving parts going on. Dibiase, using himself, sacrificing himself for the dog. Dog coming back with a big clothesline, dropping you again. And just another fun week of TV. And, of course, they're working the dog into the picture now.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, good stuff. Me getting heat, getting beat, getting heat. Even though I got beat, if I didn't have a problem with the dog, if he beat me, and he did, right?
Disqualification, I'm thinking it is right here in this one.
But I've still got plenty of heat with Ted Dibiase, right?
Sure.
Yeah, because I came off the ropes and hurt him, even though, and then I could actually do a promo. I'm not sure what I did, but I'm sure I would have said something like, "I'm tired of this guy interfering in my matches." Just overlooking the fact that me and Orton and Orndorff have interfered, and One Man Gang have interfered in, about every TV show. We've interfered in at least one match. So, that's good stuff. You'd kill two birds with one stone.
Right.
Getting the stature that you need on the dog, and not taken away from me, because even though as soon as Dog's gone, there's Ted DiBiase being carried out of there by the next TV. I can brag about that. So my heat is all back. The thing with Dog is over. He got a lot of stature from what I had,
right,
and I got it all back by messing with Ted. That's good stuff on Watt's part, coming up with that stuff.
So the next week, we get promos from both you and JYD about the incident that took place last week. Dog had you beat, and of course, you rely on some outside interference, DiBiase trying to make the save, all that good stuff. So they go back in this second week of June. It's mostly highlights of what took place the prior week, with you guys explaining the situation here in interviews. You also work a squash match over at Mike Hudspeth here. You score a win there. And we continue on following week. I did not see you in the results, so I pulled up the TV episode, and that's because Bob Roop is the special color commentator this week. And it's fun because you get to sit there with Boyd Pierce and explain your version of your feud with Ted DiBiase. So they go back and they play some old videos of your feud, and every time we come out of a clip, it's the heel giving his version of what we just saw versus what we actually saw.
Well, yeah, the true version. I mean, what really happened, of course.
So that's always classic stuff. But
I love doing that stuff. I could take the most egregious behavior on my part. I mean, I'm right there. I'm right there hitting him with the knucks, but he ends up like with Orndorff. He gets caught with them.
Right.
I blame it on him. Why anybody stupid enough to have some foreign object in their hand? I mean, they deserve to get beat. And I could get my heat back, even though I got laid out, sometimes twice in one TV show. So, yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I mean, you already had a baby face.
Yeah.
Like Dusty in Florida, Hogan in New York, and Dog in Mid-South. that you had to keep strong. You couldn't detract from them too much. You didn't want to actually beat them because they're your cash cow. Again, we talked about it last session, but when they did the TVs for Dog, the one where I did shoulder break him, I think.
Yeah.
And Ted came out and covered him and took the heat, took the knee. Well, I'm sure the towns we were working the next week weren't going to see that TV yet. They wouldn't have seen that by the time that the way Bill had booked it.
Yeah.
Doc would go into all the shows without having him seen get diminished like that. So that's the way he got away with it. And it was just a brilliant book.
After this week, you're on commentary. You're still the North American champion at this point, going into the second half of June. But we know your time here is not going to be a whole lot longer. And you're cutting the promos, explaining everything in between all of these segments. And finally, we learn next week on television, one final time, Ted Dibiase going to get his title shot against Bob Roop in a no disqualification match. See, you cheated one too many times. So now Dibiase asking for no DQ. He's ready for you. Problem is, in between these two TV shows, the Junkyard Dog defeats Bob Roop for the North American title, I do believe in New Orleans. So the JYD is now the new North American champion. You're no longer the champ, Bob. So when we come into the TV the following week, it was supposed to be Bob Roop versus Dibiase in a no DQ match for the belt. But you're no longer the champion. Now it's the Dog. And so we get promos from all three of you guys as we learn that they're going to honor the contract. It's still going to be Dibiase. It's still going to be no DQ, but now Dibiase has to wrestle his friend, the JYD, for the North American title. Now, of course, we get a promo in between from Bob Roop, who is very unhappy with this entire situation.
Of course.
But real quick before we get back to you, this is it, guys, the epic night that Ted Dibiase turns heel. He uses this as a no DQ match. He uses this as a way to defeat his friend, the Dog, by loading up that glove, knocking him out, and securing the win, stealing the title away from JYD. Dibiase basically turning heel, even though at this point we don't know that. It could have been an accident or whatever you want to believe. But basically, they push you out of the story in between the two TV shows. And I'm sure it was planned. I don't think it was a last-minute decision because they set up that no DQ. And it was cute how they did that because it's like, why are two baby faces wrestling no DQ? That was Bill Watts figuring out how can we get to that by saying, well, we can make it look like it was supposed to be Bob. And, you know, obviously in the meantime, they change it. And then Dibiase uses that against Dog and steals the belt basically here. So that's fun storyline booking. It doesn't necessarily include you, but you're still a part of it. You're cutting a promo about it. So I'm sure Bob Roop is very unhappy right now.
Well, I should be, but there is some satisfaction. You know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And once Ted started imitating me, he became successful, didn't he?
So you
used the gimmick.
You picked that up too, huh?
hid his true colors all that time. That's good stuff. What happened by doing that, Bill had a top heel right away.
Right.
Ted.
Paul's gone, and now you're going to be leaving. So now, you're right. Instantly, we have a new top heel.
Gang is going to take a little while to get over. Mm-hmm. And who else did they have? I'm trying to think.
On top? I mean, gosh. I mean, there's not really anybody else on top, I would say, at this point in time, to be honest with you.
Ted would have a ton of heat on him. Those guys would probably settle out in New Orleans.
They're about to bring in Duggan and Matt Bourne. They're going to form a little group there with Dibiase. But Dibiase is the big cheese in the, what do they call it? The Rat Pack. He was the big cheese, Ted Dibiase.
I like it. Well, that's good stuff. You know, Watts kept it going. And, you know, like me going out there, I don't know how long Orndorff was in the territory from start to finish. We know from the coincidence of they starting and finishing on my birthday 1 year apart. I was there 1 year. And you and I talked about this in private. Bill bringing into Mid-South his experience from the three other territories, including Florida, I believe, being the last one before he actually made the move back to Mid-South to get started there. We talked about this. Dog is kind of based on a Dusty Rhodes type character, where instead of having two or three baby faces that are over and two or three heels that are over, you know, like say Dusty Rhodes is 100%. Instead of having baby faces over like 80% or 75%, it'd be great if, and you say you have 2 or 3 of them, that all are going to draw. You also need to have 2 or 3 heels who have enough heat that they'll help draw.
Right.
But if you have one guy that you can do it with, you have to have a guy that's capable of being able to do it with. And Dog was. He looked the part. He looked like a stud, a guy.
Sure.
Great, big, strong, nasty looking. A good guy, good friendly guy, smart, could talk, nice smile, friendly, wonderful guy. But when he was mad, he was a junkyard dog.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could put all that drawing ability on him alone. And then you could always bring up guys underneath. Dibiase was like backing him up for a while, but Ted was over in terms of drawing ability. Ted probably had 50, and I'm not knocking Ted. It was the way it was designed. Ted probably had 50% of what Dog had, but he would contribute on a card because whoever Dog was working against, like say in New Orleans, Ted would be there with somebody that he probably had some kind of issue with too.
Right.
So the whole card was, but the other thing you had was, and this is what I was talking about, the reason I was talking about the first part of creating that single monster babyface like Dog, was that you needed a bunch of heels. I'll go back to Florida just for a second. In Miami, Dusty against superstar Billy Graham, and after he beat Graham, we had Gary Hart running about 6 heels, and Dusty smacked all down. He didn't pin anybody. He didn't put them down, pin on me. Just hit them with the elbow, and off they went. But Watts did the same thing out there. Think about it. All the shows where you had me and Orndorff and Orton, and later on, the gang coming out to the matches, running in on somebody else's match.
Right.
So it was directly. I mean, he didn't have six top heels like he did in Florida. So, But he ran out the guys he did have.
I believe it's been a long time, but I vaguely remember an interview Bill Watts did many years ago talking about picking a lot of the booking strategy up from Eddie Graham of all the territories he was in. He really put Eddie over as the guy he learned the most from as far as booking goes. And, I never to this day, and I lump them in the same category. Dusty Rhodes in Florida, Dog in the Mid-South, things of that nature. So
right.
I see them as the same type of person, but until this day, when you brought that up, I'd never looked at it like, well, Bill Watts got that from Eddie Graham. He got that from Dusty Rhodes, and it makes sense. They're the same type of character. You have the run-ins. They can take. The only difference was Dusty'd eat you up, and the Dog would do his spots, and I mean, it was great. When I go back and watch it now, I go, damn, man, Dusty just taking out everybody. When the Dog does it, I don't know. I get a big smile, so it's a little different, but I enjoyed them both. They're great characters and time and whatnot. They deserved whatever money they made. They deserved in their peaks, and they certainly entertained the fans. That's for sure. As man, we're getting close to the end. I got a couple things more I want to touch on with you. So Dibiase turns heel, turns on the Dog. Bob Roop left out in the cold. You're screwed here, Bob. But we could argue, we could call this, we could pretend it's a number 1 contenders match. The next week on TV, you're back in the ring against your good buddy, the Junkyard Dog. Now, you're both former North American champions, but there's one difference. You kind of cheated to win it, and you lost it fair and square to the Dog, whereas the Dog, he was cheated out of it, and he comes in the ring this week more aggressive than ever. A rabid dog is what he is. He gets in the ring this week, and since you're on your way out, the Dog has his way with you. And now I'm not saying you don't fight back, and I'm not saying this isn't competitive, but I loved JYD in this match. It's the first week of July, guys. Go check it out. Dog comes in this ring on a mission. And I mean, there's just more aggression in him here. Like Bill Watts lit a fire under his ass for this one. And he puts you away with that big power slam again in the middle of the ring because Dog's here. He's feuding with Dibiase now on top, and you're on your way out, and they got to end the story. So Dog puts you down for the count. 1, 2, 3. So basically he's taking his anger out on you. Poor Bob Roop. So that's where you got it from.
He was on a mission, and I couldn't just lay down from the handshake. I had to at least be trying.
Right.
But right, you're saying he had all the motivation to kick my butt. I wasn't going to actually gain that much by kicking his because he didn't have the title. But yeah, it was that was good. That was a good booking too. Yeah. And Bill Watts did that. I mean, that's what you do. I was a booker. You know, you put heat on guys, and then when
you gotta get them into their character. What would the dog be right now? He would be pissed off, and he's sick of this shit.
Yes.
And he's not having your crap this week. He's not waiting for run-ins and whatever you're going to pull out of your tights. He's just coming at you. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and talk about what a difference, you know, being glad to do it. You know, I love doing that with him because, you know, he's my friend. So I'm helping get him over. He helped me. When I came out there, he helped me. If Bill Watts asked him about me, in fact, that might have been while Bill hired me. I know when I called him, and what I see maybe happening was maybe Betty Landell telling Dog that he talked to me. Because I told Buddy I was going to call Bill. And I didn't call him right away. But then Dog telling Bill Watts, if Bob Roop calls, you know, I'd love to have him out here to work with. And that would get me hired, because Bill was very agreeable. Now, it might not have been that, but again, it could have been. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there was a difference. Bill was looking after Junkyard Dog because it was his money, big money maker. Mm-hmm. So you're going to take care of it. And in Florida, Dusty had a piece of the business. He had a share of the business. I don't know, 5% or whatever. What he was able to do, that I'm not sure Dog could do, Dusty knew everybody. So Dusty could come in the office and say, let's do this. Let me meet 4 or 5 guys here in Miami. We'll get heat back on them on television. But what we'll do is that we'll bring in, I'll talk to so-and-so and so-and-so, top guys, heels, that are ready to come in, and we can bring those guys in there and start getting them ready. And that way, and he kept doing that. He created kind of a assembly line of guys coming in. And so now Watts wasn't going to do that because, although he did, but he didn't do it as quickly as Dusty did.
No,
because Dog didn't need to eat people, and not just beat them, but eat them too. Bill didn't run his TV that way. Actually, Bill had a better way than a lot of bookers in Florida did. And I worked with 3 different guys. They were good. Harley was good, but even together, we weren't at Bill's level. And Eddie Graham was never, when somebody else was booking, Eddie wasn't up there asking for ideas or wanting to know what they did. He was retired. He was trying to stay out of it. He wanted to relax, live his life.
Well,
so
I'm looking here at your results, and you do the job to the dog in the ring, center of the ring, on TV, on your way out, and as the second half of the TV taping, your final night, it's going to somewhere in the middle of July. It's Ernie Ladd and Buck Robley teaming up, going over on the team of Bob Roop and Hangman Rick Harris, the future Black Bart at this point. And at this point, Rick Harris is kind of a preliminary guy. So they treat you with respect here. They clear the ring of Bob Roop, and then they finish old Ricky Harris off to score the win. And so basically they put you on the squash side of things in a matchup, just kind of fill you in here, put your name in the match, I guess. And so you take another L on the way out of the territory, but they don't beat you. They beat Rick Harris. I thought that was, something to do, I guess. Hey, Bob, you're still here, so let's get you on TV some way this week, right?
Well, think about it. If they beat me with either of those guys, it diminishes from Dog beat me the week before, the time before.
Right, yeah.
Doesn't it?
I stand corrected, too, and I should have known this because I mentioned it at the top of the show. That was not your last match on TV. That was your second to last match on TV. Your last match being that Mr. Olympia match that we already discussed where he puts you down with the sleeper. So a few weeks ago, Dibiase pins you, Dog pins you, and Mr. Olympia, who is basically, I think he is the number 3 babyface right here at this point. He puts you down with his sleeper. They all beat you with their finishers definitively in the middle of the ring, but it's a competitive match. Well, maybe not so much that JYD match, but but it's still a competitive match. And you make these guys look credible. And like you said, they can't eat you up. They can't just beat you like a nobody, because what has any of this meant up until now? You were just the North American champion. Granted, you cheated to win it, but you still held it for a period of time, and they can't just job you out and make you look like a nobody now.
Right. Again, back to that second to last match and the last match. Mm-hmm. If they squashed me in that second to last match, and then I went against Olympia the next week, then him putting me out like that would have much less effect because I got beat the week before. Oh, I got beat. Well, the dog beat me the week before that, right? I mean, not that long before.
Right.
So yeah, they kept me as strong as they could to make that match against, who were the two guys that beat
Ernie Ladd and Buck Robley.
Yeah. So they had credible opponents, had my name in there, but they didn't have to beat me.
Right.
And so, and again, that's good booking. That's good booking on Watt's part. That way, when I did when Olympia beat me the way he did, I still meant something. And again, you have the guys like the Road Warriors and like a Van Vader and guys like that, Andre the Giant. You have these people that can't be beat or without being totally diminished. Especially they can't get beat 1, 2, 3, get pinned without being totally diminished. And so to get their heat and keep their heat, they had to kind of, even if they got beat by DQ or count out or whatever it might be, they had to keep slaughtering people, usually on television. Whereas I had to kind of, and I'm not bragging on myself, it's just an observation. I had the kind of repertoire that you could beat me. I could get beat like a drum and still keep some heat or get it back quickly enough by always coming up with alibis. I always liked the idea, I never saw the Road Warriors either one of them back up an inch in their whole career. Well, backward reverse gear was a big part of my repertoire.
Right, yeah.
Because I could always use it and claim it was strategy, of course, which it was. But, you're not supposed to do that when you're competing. You imagine an amateur wrestler backing off the mat and saying, hey, I want to take a timeout. So I'm only making a notice of that, not so much to put myself over. But I look back on that now with a lot more enjoyment and satisfaction than I did when I was doing it, because I'm, of course, a different person now. But I don't have that kind of a bad attitude or a sick feeling in my wrestling soul that I had at that time. I was distressed by the way the business was and the way that I felt like, I'm not knocking it. I mean, the business was like that way before I got into it. It was that way after I left. It's probably still that way in many ways. So it was not me. It was not doing anything to me, but it does it to everybody, that gets into it and doesn't have the right attitude about it, how to use it. If people let the business use them, you're going to get misused. There's guys like, say, Bill Eadie, who used the business to accomplish the goals he wanted and still doing it, that used it the right way. He uses the business. He never let it use him. It depends on what you're doing.
Right.
I was a little bit more of letting the business use me than I was in using that. So any of the criticisms I do, even on myself, or talking about being jaded by the business, it's my own problem. It's something that I created. It's not something, nobody did anything to me that I didn't allow to happen. So
somebody does something to you here in July, and it's a going away present of sorts. There's a guy who's been in the business a total of 6 weeks by this point. His name was Dr. Death Steve Williams. And as a nice going away present, you get to work him at the Superdome in July and about a handful of maybe another half dozen other times here. He was just a month and a half into the professional ranks. Actually, he was in between seasons in college, and he was working the pros here. So he was still going back to college. He's just testing the waters, getting his first taste of professional wrestling as Dr. Death. And you talked about that story. You told the story at length, your match with him at the Superdome. Fun times there. Maybe you're a little overzealous. Green Steve Williams, a little scary to step in the ring with. Even Bob Roop jumps out of the ring and tells the referee, hey, tell him to calm down and I'll get back in the ring and we'll continue this work. Tell him it's a work. So that's funny. But it's also funny, too, that I saw you work him another 5 or 6 times here before you leave.
Well, it's interesting you tell me that in the sense that I didn't know that he was 6 weeks. I thought he'd been around a while.
Okay.
I didn't know where he. The guy that had the newsletter, I wouldn't read the newsletter.
From Oklahoma, you obviously just a big fan was the Cowboy, and he came recruiting, and he put him in here during the off season, and but it's basically the beginning of his wrestling career, and you had a half a dozen of those matches as he broke in and learned the business, and he went on to have quite the successful career, especially in Japan, but I mean really all over. I mean he was a hell of a talent, was Doc. But it's kind of funny just to know that, you crossed paths with him right when he was coming in, you were going out, and lucky you, Bob. And it looks like you're going to finish up here right around, like you said, right around your birthday into July, some matches with Ted DiBiase, Dick Murdoch, obviously going over on you because, well, you're leaving town, and off you go. And you're going to disappear here for a little bit. And you talked about that before, and you'll pop up in Georgia before too long. Yeah.
Well, back to Dr. Death for a second.
Sure.
I'm glad I got to work with him. And that match, where he grabbed me by my right arm, that makes a lot more sense because under those circumstances, I can't imagine. I've been a year or more when I worked with Johnny Valentine in St. Pete, and it wasn't a Superdome. I mean, it was a big building, but it wasn't like a dome. So the idea of, someone like Dr. Death coming from college, from a real, shoot life,
right?
Amateur wrestling, amateur football, as strong a shoot as you can have, to come into this where, again, it's not just doing the physical part of it, the moves and all that. It's show business too. And you don't have 6 weeks. If I'd have had to take places with him, I don't know if I'd have been able to get out to the ring. Well, I would have. But anyway, you got
to think about the adrenaline, right? The adrenaline, the lack of experience, and you're in front of, I think that specific Superdome show drew somewhere like 23,000 people. It's nothing to sneeze at when you're an amateur wrestler. You're not really wrestling in front of that many people. I mean, and the roar of the crowd too. I mean, just wow. Yeah, I can only imagine. And then to have that strength.
The electricity you can feel in the air.
Yeah.
If your receptors are working, and boy, if you're a heel, they better be. Then you pick up on it. You can feel like that old saying. I felt like I was walking on air because all your blood flow is centered on your brain because of all the input that's coming in the electromagnetic brain waves. You don't feel your feet anymore. Yeah, well, I'm glad I got the chance to work with a guy who was how could you not admire a guy who's called Dr. Death while he's still an amateur?
Right. He didn't give that name to himself, right? That was done in school. That wasn't a professional wrestling nickname, by the way, for those who are unaware.
Especially a two-sport, very successful athlete.
Yeah.
Not just one, but two. I tried to do both. At Michigan State, I got a football scholarship, but I was going to wrestle too. I couldn't do it. It was too much to try to do both. But he managed. He was able to do it.
He sure did. So,
yeah. So my hat's off to him. Do you know what he passed away from?
I believe it was cancer.
Well, that's a shame. He died young, but he made a splash while he was here.
He sure did, man. We're still talking about him, right, Bob?
We're still talking about him right now. Right. Still will be. Yeah.
Well, man, 4 episodes, nearly 8 hours of memories from the Mid-South territory, and one of your best years, by a fan's point of view, one of your best years in the wrestling business, possibly because you just had so many great storylines thanks to the Cowboy and so many great people to work with, man, from top to bottom as well. Got to thank Terry Canova again for that great memory of your match with Paul Orndorff and just kind of his memories of Bob Roop, the heel, the man with the plan, as he so aptly put it. And just so many talents here that we went through, the stories. And my God, what a great time it's been with the Mid-South. But like all good things, it must come to an end. And we'll figure out the next piece of business next time around. But man, Bob, I appreciate going back through all of this with you.
I'm going to do a Columbo here. Just one more thing.
Yes.
Can I tell one more story?
My grandparents loved Columbo. I was a Matlock guy.
Yeah, well, they're both good. But one of the things that Bill had to get guys over, heels, was to have them run into matches. There'd be a match going on, like say Dog was wrestling against Orndorff, and I would run in the match. Like in the house shows I'm talking about, not TV.
Yeah.
You saw everything that happened on TV, but in house shows. Well, what happened was that the first time I ran into, the first week, I ran into, like, say, 4 nights I ran into somebody else's match. And every one of them, when you're going to the ring and you're wrestling, you've got police, security with you, take you down and back. When you're running in, there's no security. You're on your own. So every time I went to run in, there were guys waiting for me. I'm talking about fans that had seats right on the aisle. And after the first night, I started watching to see if it was going to repeat. And during the matches, I would see guys, usually big guys, sitting on the aisle, and they'd be looking back towards the dressing room to see if they could spot anybody coming. So after that first week and have it happen in every place I did, when I came back to those same buildings, I came out an hour early. I mean, before we were supposed to be there. So we were supposed to be there at 7:30. I got there at 6:30. And what I did is I walked around the building. I looked for another way to come in to the ring where I didn't have to run down a heel aisle. Mm-hmm. So here's the purpose for the whole story. When I did, I ran in. Nobody was looking for me. I'd coming from, say, the babyface aisle. Nobody was looking for me coming down that aisle. So I get in the ring and I do my nasty stuff. And then I'd be leaving with the other heel and the security be there. And all those guys on that aisle, the heel aisle, that had been waiting for me, they all be standing there glaring at me. I'd go by and thumb my nose at them. Hey, not too smart now, are you, bozo?
Well, it goes back to the man with the plan, right?
Yeah, there you go. You're quick on the uptake there, right, my friend?
Well, hey, man, we gotta figure out how to survive this thing, right? So,
yeah, I wanted to know how I did get out of there alive, because one of the things about being a heel that gets beat up a lot, sometimes fans think, well, he gets beat up by everybody. Maybe I'll try myself. So, yeah.
Totally good.
Anyway, it's been fun.
Yeah, man, it's been a great time just covering so many names. Junkyard Dog, Dibiase, Orndorff, Orton, Ernie Ladd, the Samoans. I mean, Mr. Olympia. Dusty Rhodes beating everybody up on the concrete, pinning Paul Orndorff. He's a referee and a wrestler. Only a Meccan dream, baby. It's the only man that can
do it. The assassin coming on.
Yeah. Lots of great talent, man. Great talent here. So, man, it's been a fun time. We're going to wrap up Mid-South now, guys, and who knows where we head next. We'll figure it out over the next few days, Bob. Stay tuned to social media. We'll announce what the topic on the next episode will be. Maybe it'll be a little hodgepodge. I'm not really sure yet. I'm going to do a little research and figure out what we need to do here. But we will be back, guys, and it's going to continue to get fun over the summer months here, talking lots more about not just your career, Bob, but everyone around you as well. And just appreciate you being able to do this with me and really just breaking down an entire year. And thank God, a lot of it on videotape. It's great to be able to watch a lot of it, have you watch some of it and kind of go back and reminisce. And yeah, it's just been a great time. I appreciate you doing this.
Well, let me ask you something, please, Ray. Sure. I know the last time we talked, I asked you about you taking on a new project, the Nostalgia, right?
The Wrestling Nostalgia. That's not my show, but it is part of our brand, yes.
Well, but it's on WrestleCopia, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Haven't you taken on some new ones since then?
Oh, yeah. We've got 3 new shows. Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. He's a wrestling historian. He really knows the Indianapolis territory very well, the history, but he just loves pro wrestling in general. He always has great guests there. We've got The Other Ship, a lot of great fans. Barry Rose's buddies, actually. You know Barry. Some of his friends running a podcast. They don't just talk wrestling, they talk life. So TV, food, movies, music. Yeah. Great time with those guys. And a buddy of mine, a buddy of the group, he's does another show off and on with me where we cover territory talk. He's opening up a Memphis podcast where it's all Memphis all the time, talking about where he grew up in the Memphis territory. So, yeah, we got a lot of things going on.
Well, I know you're doing most of this by yourself, or at least a major part of it. And I just want to, I got to hand it to you because I know you're a family man. You care about your family, your wife and your kids, and getting them, you have to make time to do these things. And I don't want to say that because I know that, first of all, I want to tell you how fortunate I feel to be a part of it. And I want to just tell you how grateful I am to you and also to our fans out there, the people that pay attention to what we're doing. But, I keep saying that we couldn't do it without them, but I couldn't do it without you, Ray. So thank you very much, my friend.
Well, we couldn't do this show entitled The Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop without you. So it's great to have you part of the WrestleCopia family as well. And we'll be back soon, guys. More great stuff on the way. Bob, I'll let you tell everybody that you love them and say goodnight.
I love you out there, my friends. Thanks for listening. Everybody, please stay well.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap things up here this week. Don't forget, Brand new day for the Wrestling Stoop moving forward. Going to drop now on Thursdays. So be sure to make note of that as the WrestleCopia brand continues to expand. But in the meantime and in between time, I encourage everybody to go out there and follow friend Mr. Bob Roop over at facebook.com/PoorBobRoop. And you can find me, Ray Russell. Follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. But most of all, I encourage everybody to go over to patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia. So many great gifts there, including early show releases, digital downloads, video casts now available, and so much more. Check it out over at Patreon. Help support the brand. And until next time, on behalf of Bob, we ask you guys to hold tight and see where we head next time. Right here on the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop.